Steadfast, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with even 100,000 billion kalpas. Having to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words.
Good morning, everyone. And today we really are going to hear the Tathagata's words. On February 15th is, the traditional day that the Buddha's death, which was referred to as his parinirvana, is commemorated. So we're going to commemorate that today. And I've been reading a book by Shohaku Okumura, and in the book he references a sutra it's called the Sutra on the Buddha's Bequeathed Teaching, or in other words, the Sutra on the Final Teaching of the Buddha. And he said that this sutra is traditionally read in Zen temples on the Buddha's parinirvana day. So I want to read that sutra this morning. And this kind of also follows in line with what we've been trying to do the last couple of years. On the Buddha's Nirvana Day, on his birthday, and on his Enlightenment Day, we've been trying to read the stories of those events. And I kind of brought that forward from our Christian tradition, where on Christmas you read the story of Jesus' birth, and on Easter his resurrection. So I've been trying to do the same thing here at our Zen Center with these significant dates in our tradition. So I'm just gonna read this and make a few comments as we go along. When Shakyamuni Buddha first turned the wheel of Dharma, he crossed over the venerable Ajnata Kaundinya. The very last time he spoke the Dharma, he crossed over the venerable Subhadra. All of those whom he should have crossed over had already been crossed over. I'm assuming this means to some rivers in Buddhist cosmology. I'm not really familiar with, but I'm assuming that's what that refers to. He lay between the twin solid trees and was about to enter nirvana. At this time, in the middle period of the night, all was quiet, without any sound. Then, for the sake of all of his disciples, he spoke on the essentials of the Dharma. And he starts off a lot of these phrases with all of you monks, but I'm going to kind of modify it for our purposes here, say all of us practitioners of the way. So all of you practitioners of the way, after my nirvana, you should revere and honor the Pratimoksha. And the Pratimoksha translated is the root of liberation. It is like finding a light in the darkness, or like a poor person obtaining a treasure. You should know that it is your great teacher and is not different from my actual presence in the world. Then he goes on to now talk about the precepts. This is the first thing he talks about. And he gives a lot of examples about what we should not do. And these are all kind of relative to that period of time in India. So maybe not so relative here in our modern day, but don't focus so much on the specifics of them, but just kind of the spirit of what he's trying to say. Those of you who uphold the pure precepts should not buy, sell, or trade. You should not covet fields or buildings, or keep servants, or raise animals. You should stay far away from all kinds of agriculture and wealth, as you would avoid a pit of fire. You should not cut down grass or trees, plow fields, or dig the earth. Nor may you compound medicines, prophesize good and evil, observe the constellations, cast horoscopes by the waxing and waning of the moon, or compute astrological fortunes. All of these activities are improper. Regulate yourselves by eating at the appropriate time and by living in purity. You should not participate in worldly affairs or act as an envoy, nor should you become involved with magical spells and elixirs of immorality, or with making connections with high-ranking people, being affectionate towards them and condescending towards the lowly. With an upright mind and proper mindfulness, you should seek to cross over. Do not conceal your faults or put on a special appearance to delude the multitudes. Know your limits and be content with the 4 kinds of offerings. When you receive offerings, do not store them up. This is a general explanation of the characteristics of upholding the precepts. The precepts are the root of proper freedom. Therefore, they are called the pratimoksha. By relying on these precepts, you will give rise to all dhyana concentrations and reach the wisdom of the cessation of suffering. For this reason, all of you practitioners of the way, you should uphold the pure precepts and not allow them to be broken. If a person is able to uphold the pure precepts, they will, as a result, be able to have good dharmas. If one lacks the pure precepts, no good merit and virtue can arise. Therefore, you should know that the precepts are the dwelling place for the foremost and secure merit and virtue. So I think it's interesting that he starts off this with the precepts. And to me, that means living an ethical and moral life. And in all of our ordination ceremonies, from the lay ordination ceremony to the priest ordination ceremony, and even in the private Dharma transmission, those all have a renewal of our vows in maintaining the precepts in them. So that just kind of shows you the importance of the precepts in our practice. So now he's going to talk about the sense organs. All of you practitioners of the way, if you are already able to abide by the precepts, you should restrain the 5 sense organs and do not allow them to enter the 5 desires as they please. It is like a person tending cattle who carries a staff while watching them, not allowing them to run loose and trample others' sprouting grains. If you let your 5 sense organs run loose, not only will the 5 desires become boundless, they will be uncontrollable. They are like a violent horse, unrestrained by reins, who drags a person along so that he falls into a pit. If you are robbed or injured, you will suffer for only a single life. But the injury from the plundering done by the 5 sense organs brings misfortunes which extend for many lives. Because their harm is extremely heavy, it is impermissible to be careless. For this reason, wise people restrain the 5 sense organs and do not go along with them. They restrain them like thieves who are not allowed to run loose. If you let them run loose for a while, before long you will observe their destruction. Since the 5 sense organs have the mind as their ruler, you should restrain the mind as well. Now he talks about restraining the mind. Your mind is as dangerous as an extremely poisonous snake, a savage beast, or a hateful robber. A great fire rushing upon you is still not a satisfactory analogy for the mind. It is like a person carrying a container of honey who, as he moves along in haste, only pays attention to the honey and does not notice a deep pit. It is like a mad elephant without a barb, or a monkey in a tree jumping about, which are both difficult to restrain. You should hasten to control it and not allow it to run loose. Those who allow their minds to wander freely lose the goodness that people do. By restraining it in one place, there is no affair which cannot be completed. For this reason, all of you practitioners of the way, you should vigorously subdue your mind. Next, he talks about what I think is the middle way. All of you practitioners of the way, you should accept various kinds of food and drink as if you were taking medicine. Whether they be good or bad, do not take more or less of them, but use them to cure hunger and thirst and to maintain the body. All of you should be the same way as bees gathering from flowers, only taking the pollen without harming their form or scent. Receive people's offerings to put an end to distress, but do not seek to obtain too much and spoil their good hearts. Be like a wise man who, having estimated the load that suits the strength of his ox, does not exceed that amount and exhaust its strength. Next, he talks about staying awake and being mindful. All of you practitioners of the way, during the day, with a vigorous mind, cultivate the Dharma and do not allow the opportunity to be lost. In the first and last periods of the night, also do not be lax. And during the middle period of the night, chant sutras to make yourself well informed. Do not let the causes and conditions of sleep cause your single life to pass in vain, so that you do not obtain anything at all. You should be mindful of the fire of impermanence, which burns up all the world. Seek to cross yourself over and do not sleep. The thieves of afflictions are always about to kill you even more than your mortal enemies. How can you sleep? How can you not rise yourself to awaken? The poisonous serpent of afflictions is sleeping in your mind, just as if a black viper were asleep in your room. You must use the hook of precepts to quickly remove it. When the sleeping snake is gone, then you can rest at ease. Those who sleep, even though the snake has not yet gone, are without shame. The clothing of shame among all adornments is the very best. Shame can be compared to an iron bar which can restrain people from doing evil. Therefore, you should always have a sense of shame and not be without it even for a moment. For if you have no sense of shame, you will lose all your merit and virtue. Those who have shame have good dharmas. One without it is no different from the birds and beasts. Next, he talks about anger. All of you practitioners of the way, even if a person dismembered you piece by piece, your mind should be self-contained. Do not allow yourself to become angry. Moreover, you should guard your mouth and not give rise to evil speech. If you allow yourself to have thoughts of anger, you will hinder your own way and lose the merit and virtue you have gained. Patience is a virtue which neither upholding the precepts nor the ascetic practices are able to compare with. One who is able to practice patience can be called a great person who has strength. If you are unable to happily and patiently undergo the poison of malicious abuse, as if drinking sweet dew, you cannot be called a wise person who has entered the way. Why is this? The harm from anger ruins all good dharmas and destroys one's good reputation. People of the present and of the future will not even wish to see this person. You should know that a heart of anger is worse than a fierce fire. You should always guard against it and not allow it to enter you. For of the thieves which rob one's merit and virtue, none surpass anger. Anger may be excusable in lay people who indulge in desires, and in people who do not cultivate the way, who are without the means to restrain themselves. But for people who have left home life, who cultivate the way and are without desires, harboring anger is impermissible. Without a clear, cool cloud, there should not be a sudden blazing clash of thunder. Next, he talks about humility. All of you practitioners of the way, you should rub your heads, for you have relinquished fine adornments. You wear the garments of a Buddhist monk, and you carry the alms bowl to use in begging for your livelihood. Look at yourself in this way. If thoughts of arrogance arise, you should quickly destroy them, because arrogance and pride are not appropriate even among the customs of lay people. How much the less for a person who has left the home life and entered the way. For the sake of liberation, you should humble yourself and receive alms for your food. All of you practitioners of the way, thoughts of flattery are contradictory to the way. Therefore, you should have a straightforward disposition of mind. You should know that flattery is only deceit, so people who have entered the way should not flatter. For this reason, all of you should have an upright mind and take a straightforward disposition as your basis. Next, he goes into the 8 awarenesses of great people, which we've talked about multiple times. This is the last chapter in Dogen's Shobogenzo, and this is where Dogen gets the material for that. So the first awareness of great people is having few desires. All of you practitioners of the way, you should know that people with many desires suffer much because they constantly seek for their own benefits. People who reduce their desires, who are free of seeking or longing, do not have so much trouble. Straight away, reduce your desires and cultivate appropriately. One who reduces desires can increase merit. People who reduce their desires do not flatter in order to get what they want from others. Moreover, they are not dragged along by their sense organs. People who reduce their desires have, as a consequence, a mind which is peaceful, without worry or fear. When situations arise, they are ever satisfied and never discontent. One who reduces his desires can realize nirvana. This is my teaching on reducing desires. Next thing he talks about is contentment. All of you practitioners of the way, if you wish to be free from all suffering and difficulty, you should know contentment. The Dharma of contentment is the dwelling of blessings, happiness, and peace. People who are content, although they might sleep on the ground, are peaceful and happy. Those who are not content, although they might abide in the heavens, are still dissatisfied. Those who are not content, even if they are wealthy, still they are poor. Those who are content, although they might be poor, they are truly rich. Those who are discontent are always dragged along by their 5 sense organs and are pitied by those who are content. This is my teaching on contentment. Next, he talks about solitude and quietude. All of you practitioners of the way, seek quietude, unconditioned peace, and happiness. You should be apart from confusion and disturbances and dwell alone in seclusion. People who dwell in quietude are revered by the heavenly ruler Shakra and all the gods. For this reason, you should leave your own group and other groups, dwell alone in seclusion. Contemplate the root of suffering's end. If you delight in crowds, you will undergo much affliction. It is like when a flock of birds gathers in a great tree. The tree is in danger of collapsing. One who is bound to the world drowns in a multitude of suffering, like an old elephant stuck in mud who is unable to get himself out. This is my teaching on seclusion. Next, he talks about vigor and determination. All of you practitioners of the way, if you are vigorous, no affair will be difficult for you. For this reason, all of you should be vigorous. It is like a small stream flowing for a long time, which is able to bore through stones. If, on the other hand, the mind of one who cultivates frequently becomes lax, it is like trying to make a fire by friction, but resting before you get any heat. Though you want to make the fire is hard to get. This is my teaching on vigor. Next, he talks about the fifth awareness, which is mindfulness. All of you practitioners of the way, seeking for a good and wise advisor or for a wholesome benefactor, does not compare with mindfulness. If you do not neglect mindfulness, none of the thieves of the afflictions can enter your mind. For this reason, all of you should constantly collect the thoughts in your mind. If you lose mindfulness, you will lose all merit. If your power of mindfulness is firm and strong, though you mingle with the thieves of the five desires, they cannot harm you. It is like joining a battle wearing armor. Thus, you have nothing to fear. This is my teaching on mindfulness. Next, he talks about concentration or meditation. All of you practitioners of the way, if you collect your thoughts, your mind will be concentrated. If your mind is concentrated, you can know the arising and ceasing of all dharma's appearances. For this reason, all of you should constantly and vigorously cultivate concentration. If you attain concentration, your mind will not be scattered. It is like a household that uses its water sparingly and is able to regulate its irrigation ditches. One who cultivates concentration is also the same way. For the sake of the water of wisdom, he cultivates dhyana concentration, so it does not leak away. This is my teaching on concentration. Next, the seventh awareness is the awareness of wisdom. All of you practitioners of the way, if you have wisdom, you will be free from greed or attachment. Always examine yourselves and do not allow yourselves to have faults. This way you can gain liberation within my Dharma. If you never examine yourself, I do not know what to call you, for you are neither a cultivator of the way nor a lay person. One with wisdom rides in a secure boat for crossing over the ocean of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Wisdom is also like a big bright lamp in the darkness of ignorance, a good medicine for those who are sick, and a sharp axe for cutting down the tree of afflictions. For this reason, all of you should increasingly benefit yourselves by learning, considering, and cultivating wisdom. Even though a person only has flesh eyes, if he has illuminating wisdom, he has clear understanding. This is my teaching on wisdom. And then finally, the last awareness is to refrain from idle speech. All of you practitioners of the way, if you indulge in all sorts of idle discussions, your mind will be scattered, and even though you have left the home life, you will not attain liberation. For this reason, all of you should quickly renounce scattered thoughts and idle discussions. If you want to attain the happiness of still tranquility, you only need to eliminate the error of frivolous debate. This is my teaching on not having idle discussions. So that's the end of the 8 awarenesses of great people. Now he starts to wrap things up. All of you practitioners of the way, with respect to merit, you should always be single-minded. Relinquish laziness as you would avoid a hateful thief. The world-honored one has now finished his compassionate teaching for your benefit. All of you need only to practice it diligently. Whether you are in the mountains, in a desolate marsh, beneath a tree, or in a quiet dwelling, be mindful of the Dharma you have received and do not forget it. You should always exert yourself and practice it vigorously. You do not want to reach the time of death and be filled with remorse because you spent your life in vain. I am like a good doctor who understands illnesses and prescribes medicines. Whether you take it or not is not the doctor's responsibility. Moreover, I am like a virtuous guide who points out a good road. If you who hear of it do not walk down that road, it is not the guide's fault. All of you practitioners of the way, if you have doubts about suffering and the other 4 truths, you may quickly ask about them now. Do not harbor doubts and fail to clear them up. At that time, the world-honored one repeated this 3 times, yet no one asked him a question. And why was this? Because the assembly did not harbor any doubts. The world-honored one wanted everyone in that great assembly to be firm and secure. So with a mind of great compassion, he spoke again for their sake. All of you practitioners of the way, do not be grieved or distressed. If I were to live in the world for an eon, my association with you would still come to an end. A meeting without a separation can never be. The Dharma for benefiting oneself and others is complete. If I were to live longer, it would be of no further benefit. From now on, all of my disciples must continuously practice. Then the thus come one's Dharma body will always be enduring and indestructible. You should know, therefore, that everything in the world is impermanent. Meetings necessarily have separations, so do not harbor grief. Every appearance in the world is like this. Be vigorous. Seek liberation right away. Destroy the darkness of delusion with the brightness of wisdom. The world is truly dangerous and unstable. It is not reliable. My attainment of nirvana is like getting rid of an evil disease. The malign body is falsely named, drowning in the great ocean of birth, sickness, old age, and death. How can one who is wise not be happy when he gets rid of it, like killing a hateful thief? All of you practitioners of the way, you should always single-mindedly and diligently seek the way out of all the moving and unmoving dharmas of the world, for they are all decaying, unfixed experiences. All of you, here I stop. There is nothing more to say. Time is passing away, and I want to cross over to nirvana. These are my very last instructions.
May the breath of this penetrate into each thing in all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize foot